So let's go ahead then and move on to the next part of this, which we find incredibly important, which is, and let's put this up there on the screen, which is that over the weekend, the Russians claimed the first use of a hypersonic Krystal missile in Ukraine. This is an incredibly significant event. Hypersonic missiles, obviously, are capabilities which the Russians and the Chinese have, but which the United States, at least from what they tell us, we do not have. The reason why it matters is because they are much faster than any traditional ICBM, intercontinental ballistic missile, and because they defeat any of the military anti-air defense, anti-missile defense systems that we have currently in place. It's kind of like an increase in an offensive strategic weapon, and it's a very clear demonstration by the Russians. If you think that they needed to use this militarily in Ukraine, they didn't. They did this as a very clearly screw you, and I'm using, PG-13 language, to NATO and to the United States, which is, hey, we got these missiles, we can use them, here's how well they work. And by the way, we could strap a nuke to it if we wanted to, and it could be in the city of Washington in 5 minutes from Moscow. I don't know the exact flight time, but it's something like that. And if you launch it even closer, then you're going to have no warning whatsoever, and we can destroy and penetrate the United States. You have no defense systems that are even capable of this. This is something the Russians did often when in Syria. They would use ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and other of those types of technology. Frankly, we did the same thing whenever we used Tomahawk missiles against the Assad regime. This is all part of a proxy war and kind of like a, showing what exactly you can do. But the use of the missile itself is an incredibly important strategic event, Krystal.
Yeah.
And very much as a warning to all of us here in the United States. And I think we should heed that warning. I think we should understand what that warning is.
Yeah, and they bragged about it.
Yes.
They put on a video. And this is just a message of don't F with us. And I think it fits well with what we were just saying about the fact that they have suffered significantly more losses, that they haven't achieved their military objectives in the time frame that they expected, that I think there are genuine issues with the morale of the Russian soldiers. All of that being said, this is still, they're saying, hey, whatever problems we're having on the battlefield, remember what we've got in the arsenal. Remember the capabilities that we have here and what we can do and the pain we can bring not only to Ukraine, but the broader region if you continue to escalate. So this was meant to be a direct message to us.
Yes.
And to NATO and Europe in general that, don't F with us. That's basically the message that this sends, because this can also, these Kinzhals can also carry a nuclear warhead.
Exactly.
So that's also really important to keep in mind in terms of we've seen this sort of escalating nuclear rhetoric from Putin and from his Kremlin allies. This should also be seen as part of that escalatory rhetoric.
Yeah, and so Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, he was on one of the Sunday shows. He is significantly trying to downplay this. It's like, oh, we're not too worried about it. Let's take a listen to how the Biden administration is trying to handle this.
Russia is also saying that it used a hypersonic missile at least twice in Ukraine so far. So this is a missile that travels, more than a mile a minute. It's very difficult to intercept. Is this weaponry game changer?
I would not see it as a game changer. I think, again, the reason that he's resorting to using these types of weapons is because he's trying to reestablish some momentum. And we've seen him attack towns and cities and civilians outright. We expect to see that continue. But I don't think that this in and of itself will be a game changer.
Okay, he's trying to frame it in terms of the actual Russia-Ukraine war.
Yeah.
They didn't use this because they militarily needed to. They did it because they have it and we don't have it, and we're not going to have it for several years. It was a very clear demonstration of capability, and they're trying to tamp that down. Clint Ehrlich, who is a military analyst, put this up there on the screen. He very much has a different, and I think the correct take, which is that this is a major deterrent signal to NATO. As he says, quote, "There is no plausible reason that the Kinzhal would need to be deployed against Ukraine, given that its own air defenses have been suppressed. It is Russia's single most advanced conventional weapon, 13 times faster than a Tomahawk missile with 3 times the amount of payload. And its use was similar to when the Trump administration, used the Moab bomb, the famous mother of all bombs in Afghanistan. Both of those, that one was much more of a signal to the Iranians, but this is all part of a broader display of strategic military power, which is, hey, you want to ship all these missiles and all this stuff to Ukraine? Okay, that's fine. this is what could be waiting for you. And they could use, Krystal, a Kinzhal missile against an arms convoy that we send in there. Even if it is armed by the Ukrainians, I very much could see that happening. And look, all of this is what the danger of escalation is, which is that when Russia bombs that military convoy that we sent in, only 10 miles from the Polish border. Look, everybody says that the navigation systems are good, but we're not talking about a lot of space here. I mean, all it takes is one guy to do something once wrong, and the next thing you know, you have a missile that lands in NATO territory. Now what? Now what do we do? I mean, we're at war. That's a tripwire. I mean, if you kill the wrong guy, or we had those 3 NATO heads of state that went to Kiev, and then here in D.C. we have these idiot pundits who are arguing that Biden should go to Kiev. If he dies, it's over. We're going to nuclear war. Are you people crazy? We can't send the president into a war zone like that we're not actively involved in. There is a lack of consideration here as to just how important the use of this technology is, and it's the reason that the Chinese used it last year as well, flying it all the way around the globe in a Sputnik moment to say, hey, we got this too. And their development and use of that technology are very clear to sign to us. Do not screw with us.
Yeah, and the narrative that's being spun by Austin and echoed by a lot of their media allies is, oh, we think Russia's using Kinzhals because they're running out of more precisely targeted missiles. It's like, no, that's not what this is about at all. And they know that, right? They're not stupid, but this is clearly what they're trying to sell to the American people is, oh, the Ukrainians are actually, they fought it to a stalemate. If we just do a little bit more, and actually these tactics from the Russians, this is a sign of their desperation. That means if we just continue what we're doing and up the ante a little bit, then we're going to push them in the direction of ultimately having a peace. So that's how they're trying to spin this, but that's not really what's ultimately going on here. It's very important that you all understand that.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a proxy media war happening in terms of the use of the hypersonic missile. The use of the missile itself is a very important strategic event, and it's meant very clearly in order to signal things to us. And we should actually watch very closely with the use of some of these weapons that the Russians are using, thermobaric weapons and others. The reason behind all of this is a defense and a display of strength towards the NATO countries. Even though, yes, it's ridiculous and asymmetric, it is. But there's a reason that, on the one hand, it also is a demonstration to the Ukrainians of what we were talking about earlier in this block, which is, hey, look, you want to start, using javelins and trying to shoot down our stuff? Fine. We're going to start using hypersonic missiles, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, all these things against you. This is the immense military power that they still have to bear. And they're not pulling out all the stops, but it's a demonstration that in a full-scale hot war with the Russians, this is exactly the type of technology that we would have to deal with. It's a type of stuff which could penetrate U.S. air defense systems. And it's also a symbol to all of us of how fast things can go off the rails.
That's right.
I mean, all it takes is one mistake, 2 mistakes, something like that. And then within 5 minutes, 100 million, 200 million people are dead.
Well, and what the Biden administration has been, this line they've been trying to walk in terms of what they do send into Ukraine and what they refrain from sending into Ukraine is they're trying to provide things that don't have the ability to be an offensive weapon against Moscow.
This is part of why the MiG discussion matters.
Exactly, because there were a lot of people who were playing dumb saying, well, I don't see what's different about fighter jets. Well, what's different about fighter jets is that those can go into Moscow and be there very quickly. Whereas if you have, these Stinger missiles and these sorts of things, obviously those are most effective used there on the ground. And so, when you've got morons like Lindsey Graham running around talking about regime change in Russia and assassinating Putin, and other people like Adam Kinzinger basically calling for full-scale war, Moscow is looking at those things and feeling very leery about the possibility of U.S. offensive action against the regime. So that's why they've tried to walk this line, but they are under increasing pressure to do more, provide more weapons, up the ante in terms of what is actually being sent over there. And this whole narrative is being used to justify that direction.
Yeah, that's right. Just remember, this was done explicitly as a reaction to our shipping of arms over there. So let's just keep that in mind as we continue this discussion. Hey guys, we're going to be totally upfront with you. This is the most perilous time that we have ever operated in.
It is so difficult just to try to sort through the news, but even more importantly, to bring you accurate information as this wave of lockdown and censorship spreads across the nation.
Yeah, look, if you can become a premium subscriber today at breakingpoints.com, you're going to help us build out a vibrant, independent media ecosystem which is free of mainstream pressure. We can't tell you how important that is at a time like this.
Yep, that's right. Go to breakingpoints.com to subscribe. We love you guys and we appreciate you so much.